Mornings like this used to be my favorite. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the kitchen, blending with the subtle vanilla scent of a candle burning on the counter. Sunlight streamed through the large windows, painting golden streaks across the marble floor. Outside, the city hummed in the distance, but inside, everything was still, calm, steady, perfect. I sat at the kitchen island, sipping my coffee, letting the warmth settle in my hands. I had built this life piece by piece, just like the structures I designed, carefully, intentionally, with the precision of an architect. I thrived on stability, on knowing that the things I created were strong enough to last. And for years, I believed my marriage was one of those things. Across from me, Emily stood at the sink, lazily stirring her tea. She was the kind of woman people noticed without her even trying, sleek chestnut hair falling perfectly in place, striking green eyes that once held a warmth I thought was just for me. Even after 10 years, she still looked effortlessly beautiful. But something about her felt off. Her movements were detached, almost absent, like her mind was somewhere else. I didn't ask. I didn't need to. Then, her phone buzzed. A small thing. A single vibration on the countertop. I glanced at it without thinking. And in an instant, the life I had so carefully built cracked at its foundation. Come to us. Take a break from your husband for a while. My brain refused to process the words at first. I blinked, as if that would somehow change what I had seen. Maybe I had misread it. Maybe the words would shift into something harmless. They didn't. My heartbeat slowed, then slammed against my ribs, hard and fast. My fingers twitched. A rational part of me, the part that valued control, told me to look away. To pretend I hadn't seen anything. To let it go. But I couldn't. Before I even realized what I was doing, my hand moved on its own. In one swift motion, I tilted her phone just slightly and snapped a picture of the message with my own. Evidence. I exhaled slowly, forcing my pulse to steady. Years of working under pressure, handling million-dollar projects, had trained me to control my reactions. Emily turned back around, completely unaware. She took a sip of her tea and smiled softly. Anything interesting? I met her gaze and gave her the same easy smile I had perfected in business meetings. Just an email from work, I lied smoothly. But inside, my mind was a storm. The words wouldn't stop repeating in my head. Come to us. Take a break from your husband. It wasn't just an affair. It was an arrangement. A routine. And whoever had sent that message spoke to her like they had done this before, like she belonged to them more than she did to me. I felt the air in the kitchen shift. A place that had once been my sanctuary now felt foreign, tainted. And the woman standing across from me? She wasn't my wife. She was a stranger. But I didn't let any of that show. I didn't react. I didn't lash out. Instead, I did what I had always done best. I analyzed. Emily hadn't looked at her phone. She hadn't even noticed the message had arrived yet. That meant she hadn't been waiting for it, hadn't been anxious about a response. Which meant I had time. I inhaled slowly, calming the storm in my chest. A plan was already forming in my mind. Because if there's one thing I've learned in my career, it's this: you don't tear down a structure before understanding exactly how it was built. And right now, I intended to understand everything. That night, I lay in bed next to Emily, staring at the ceiling, listening to the steady rhythm of her breathing. She slept soundly, like nothing in the world was wrong. Like she wasn't sneaking off to someone or somewhere behind my back. The words from her phone replayed in my mind. Come to us. Take a break from your husband for a while. The casual cruelty of it made my stomach turn. Whoever sent that message didn't just see Emily as a lover. They saw her as available, as if she was already halfway out the door. For a brief moment, I considered the possibility that this was all a misunderstanding. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe she had a friend who was cheating, and she was just listening, not participating. Maybe it was nothing. But deep down, I already knew the truth. I've always had an instinct for spotting cracks before they become a collapse. It's what makes me a great architect. And that same gut instinct was screaming at me now. This wasn't a mistake. This was real. And if I wanted the truth, I wasn't going to find it lying here, waiting for the answers to come to me. So while Emily slept peacefully beside me, I slipped out of bed and padded barefoot to my home office, shutting the door quietly behind me. I turned on my laptop. The first step. The phone number. It wasn't saved under a name, just a number, long and unfamiliar. That alone told me a lot. I ran a quick search. The results confirmed what I feared. It was a VIP number, not tied to a real phone carrier, meaning someone had set it up deliberately to avoid being traced. That only made it worse. If it had been a friend, a coworker, an old acquaintance, the number would have been attached to something real. A home address, a business, something. But this was hidden. Just like the truth Emily had been keeping from me. I kept digging. There are ways to pull back the veil if you know where to look. And within minutes, I found it, a connection between this number and a business name. Horizon Spa and Wellness Center. A harmless name. Too harmless. I frowned. I know this city inside and out, and even though I'm not the type to frequent spas, I'd never heard of this place before. I opened their website. It looked normal enough, professional, polished, filled with stock images of massage tables, aromatherapy candles, soft lighting. Everything an upscale spa should have. Except for one thing. No customer reviews. No Yelp ratings. No Google comments. No evidence that real people had ever walked through those doors. Just a contact page, a phone number, and one other detail that made my stomach tighten. A members-only login portal. I clicked on it. The page asked for a username and password. No option to sign up. No way to register. Invitation only. I exhaled slowly, leaning back in my chair. This wasn't a spa. Or at least, it wasn't just a spa. It was something else. Something that required secrecy. Something that didn't want to be found by anyone who wasn't already inside. Something that Emily had access to. I stared at the screen, my pulse steady but my mind racing. My marriage, built on trust, on love, had a whole hidden world I hadn't even known existed. And I needed proof. More than just a suspicious message. More than just a number. More than just a locked portal. I needed undeniable evidence. And I knew exactly how to get it. I opened our bank statements. If Emily had been visiting this place, she had been paying for it somehow. I scrolled through months of transactions, scanning for anything unusual. And then I saw it. Multiple charges. Once a month, like clockwork. But not under Horizon Spa and Wellness Center. No. These transactions were labeled under a different name, Holistic Health Services, LLC. A fake business name. A shell company. A front. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay calm. The charges varied, sometimes a few hundred, sometimes over 1,000. Not a massage. Not a simple spa treatment. A membership. A service. Something Emily had been paying to be part of. Something she had never mentioned. Something she had deliberately hidden. My hands tightened into fists, but I didn't let the anger take over. Not yet. The rage would come later. Right now, I had work to do. I copied everything. Every transaction, every charge. Took screenshots of the website, the hidden login page, the linked phone number. And then, without hesitation, I made a decision. If I wanted the truth, I couldn't just sit behind a screen. I had to see it for myself. Whatever this place was, whatever Emily was involved in, I was going to walk through those doors. And once I did, I knew nothing would ever be the same again. The night air was thick with the scent of cologne, cigarette smoke, and the faint metallic tang of the city as I pulled up outside the building. From the outside, it looked unassuming, a sleek, modern facade with tinted windows and a small, gold-lettered sign that read Serenity Spa and Wellness. To anyone passing by, it was just another high-end relaxation spot. But I knew better. My heart pounded steadily in my chest, but my hands remained still as I killed the engine and stepped out of the car. The tailored blazer I wore was a calculated choice, clean-cut, professional, the kind of thing that said I belonged here. If this was what I thought it was, then this place wasn't for just anyone. It was for the wealthy, the connected, the ones who could afford to bury their secrets. And tonight, I was stepping into a world I had never imagined my wife being a part of. A young man in a crisp black suit stood by the entrance, his posture relaxed but his eyes sharp. As I approached, he gave me a once-over, then pressed a finger to the small earpiece he was wearing. No words were exchanged. The heavy glass door swung open without hesitation. I didn't ask questions. I stepped inside. The moment I crossed the threshold, I felt it, the shift in atmosphere. Dim lighting cast long, elegant shadows across plush velvet seating and gold-trimmed walls. A soft jazz tune played in the background, blending seamlessly with the low hum of murmured conversations and the occasional crystalline chime of champagne glasses meeting in a toast. There were no crude neon signs, no obvious displays of indulgence. This wasn't some seedy nightclub. It was something far worse. This place was designed to exude exclusivity. Everything about it was carefully curated, not to attract attention, but to ensure absolute discretion. A playground for the rich. A sanctuary for the unfaithful. A place for people like Emily. A woman in an elegant black dress approached me, her steps smooth, practiced. She was trained for this. "Welcome, Mr. Andrews," she purred, addressing me by the alias I had used to get in. "Mr. Carver is expecting you." She gestured toward a grand staircase at the far end of the lounge, where a man stood watching. Tall, well-dressed, dangerous. Benjamin Carver. The owner. The mastermind. Our eyes met. And then I started up the stairs. Carver extended a hand when I reached him, a smirk playing at the corner of his lips. "Glad you could make it," he said smoothly, his grip firm, controlled. I matched his energy, nodding slightly. "I've heard good things." He chuckled, gesturing for me to follow. As we walked, the hallway grew quieter, the air heavier. Anticipation. Secrecy. A tension that only existed between people who knew they were doing something they shouldn't. "I keep my clientele very exclusive," Carver said, his voice measured. "Men like us need certain assurances. Privacy. Quality. A place where there are no questions." His lips curled into a smirk. "And no obligations." I exhaled slowly, feigning amusement. "Discretion is key, then." Carver shot me a knowing glance. "Exactly." He stopped in front of an ornate door with a gold handle. "You'll be taken care of here," he said, opening it with a subtle flourish. "Enjoy yourself, Mr. Andrews. I have a feeling you'll fit right in." With that, he stepped aside. And I walked into the unknown. The lighting inside the room was softer. Warmer. Intimate. Dark curtains framed the space, billowing slightly from the soft breeze of an unseen vent. A plush leather lounge sat in the center, a small table beside it. A silver tray held a bottle of vintage champagne. 2 glasses. Already poured. My pulse remained steady. But my mind was racing. Every detail mattered. Every second counted. The door behind me clicked shut. And then, the sound of silk against skin. The soft click of high heels on polished floors. And a voice, low, confident, teasing. "You must be new." I turned, and my world stopped. Emily stood in front of me, wrapped in a silk dress the color of deep wine, clinging to her curves in a way that left little to the imagination. A delicate bracelet slid down her wrist as she adjusted the thin strap of her dress, her movements fluid. Practiced. This was routine for her. She didn't recognize me. Not at first. Her lips curled into a slow, inviting smile. She took a step forward, her heels silent against the thick carpet. "I don't usually take on first-timers," she murmured, tilting her head slightly, her green eyes studying me. "But for you." Her fingers ghosted along the edge of the table. "I might make an exception." I didn't move. I didn't react. I just let her words hang between us. The silence stretched. And then, recognition. It hit her all at once. The way her breath caught. The way the color drained from her face. She took a half-step back. Barely perceptible. But I saw it. Her lips parted, as if to say something. Anything. But the words never came. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees, clasping my hands together. My voice was calm. Unshaken. "Hi, sweetheart." Emily swayed slightly, as if the ground beneath her had shifted. "Daniel," she whispered. I tilted my head slightly, watching her. That's a funny question, I said, my voice edged with quiet amusement. I could ask you the same thing. Her hands trembled. Her gaze darted toward the door. Calculating. Desperate. Daniel, I held up a hand. The movement was slow, deliberate, and it silenced her instantly. Please, I said, my voice steady. Cold. By all means, explain. Silence. Emily's fingers curled into fists at her sides. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. For the first time in our entire marriage, she had nothing to say, and I had never seen her so terrified. Emily's hands trembled as she clasped them together, her green eyes darting from my face to the door and back again. I could see it, the gears in her mind turning at full speed, searching for a way out. A way to rewrite what was happening. But there was no way out of this. Not this time. Daniel, she breathed, barely above a whisper, her voice laced with something between panic and disbelief. What are you doing here? I studied her, taking in every detail. The way her fingers twitched, the slight quiver in her bottom lip, the way she swallowed hard, her throat tightening. She was scrambling to find an explanation, a lie that could somehow smooth this over. But I wasn't here to be lied to. I leaned back in my chair, stretching out my legs, keeping my voice even. I could ask you the same thing, Emily. She shook her head quickly, too quickly. This isn't what it looks like. I let out a slow, mirthless laugh, resting my elbow on the armrest. Really? Because it looks a hell of a lot like my wife standing in front of me in a dress I've never seen before, inside a club she's never mentioned, prepared to entertain a man who isn't me. She flinched. I saw the moment the words hit her like a slap to the face. Daniel, please, she whispered. I can explain. I raised a brow. Go ahead. Silence. Emily opened her mouth, but nothing came out. For the first time, she had no rehearsed response, no charming excuse, no carefully crafted words designed to diffuse the situation. She was caught. I exhaled, tapping my fingers lightly against the table. How long? Her eyes flickered with something. Regret? Guilt? It was impossible to tell. I don't know. Try. My voice was sharper this time. She hesitated. A few months. I nodded slowly, keeping my expression unreadable. And what exactly have you been doing for a few months, Emily? She swallowed hard. It's not what you think. It was just an escape. A distraction. It didn't mean anything. I tilted my head, watching her. It didn't mean anything, I repeated. So I assume you were doing this for free, then? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you were paying for a membership. Regularly. Quietly. Her face drained of color. That was the moment she realized I had done more than just catch her in the act. I had proof. She took a shaky breath, her hands gripping the fabric of her dress as if holding on to something tangible could keep her from falling apart. Daniel, she said softly, desperation seeping into her voice. I never stopped loving you. I let out a short, humorless laugh. You don't betray the people you love, Emily. Tears welled in her eyes. I didn't mean for it to go this far. But it did. She nodded weakly, her breath coming in short, uneven gasps. I stood, adjusting the cuffs of my blazer with deliberate precision. Tell me something, I said, my voice quieter now, calmer. Every morning, when you looked at me. Every night, when you kissed me good night. Did you ever feel even a shred of guilt? Her lips parted, but no words came. I nodded, already knowing the answer. That's what I thought. I turned, walking toward the door. Daniel, wait. She reached out, but I stepped back before she could touch me. For the first time, she saw it. The distance between us. The irreversible shift. Tears slipped down her cheeks. You're not going to forgive me, are you? I met her gaze, holding it steady. You don't deserve forgiveness. And with that, I walked out, leaving her in the ruins of the life she had just destroyed. I walked out of that room without looking back. My steps were steady, my breathing even, but inside, I could feel the weight of what had just happened pressing down on me. I had spent years thinking Emily was my partner, my equal, the person I could trust above anyone else. And now, She was nothing more than a stranger wrapped in expensive silk and carefully rehearsed lies. As I made my way back down the grand staircase, the club felt different. The dim lighting, the whispered conversations, the clinking of glasses, it was all just a facade. A carefully crafted illusion designed to make men forget who they were and women forget what they had at home. But I hadn't come here to forget. I had come here to remember exactly who I was. And I had one final move left to play. I reached into my pocket, pulling out my phone. The screen was already open to the video I had recorded earlier, a time-stamped, undeniable piece of evidence that exposed not just Emily, but everything this place represented. With a single tap, I uploaded it. A slow progress bar filled the screen. 15 seconds. 20. The moment the upload completed, my phone buzzed. Then another buzz. Then another. It had begun. Across the club, people started checking their phones. First, it was just a few. Then more. Faces twisted in confusion, in shock, in horror. This place thrived in secrecy. It survived because no one ever talked about it. But now, it was everywhere. The staff tensed. Security guards exchanged looks. The whispers turned to hushed panic. And then, "What the hell is this?" A deep, furious voice cut through the air. I turned just as Benjamin Carver stormed into the lounge, his perfectly composed mask cracking at the edges. He wasn't just the owner of this place. He was the one who made sure the secrets stayed buried. Until now. His eyes locked onto me, filled with barely contained rage. "You set this up," he accused, his voice low and dangerous. I slipped my phone back into my pocket, meeting his glare with a calm I knew would infuriate him more. "I just gave the world a little transparency," I said, my tone casual. "Isn't that what wellness centers are all about?" His jaw tightened. "Shut it down. Now." I smiled. Actually smiled. "Oh, Ben," I said, shaking my head. "I don't think you understand. There is no shutting this down." His eyes flickered toward the club's patrons, some of whom were already leaving, others frantically typing on their phones. The damage was done. Carver took a step toward me. I didn't move. "You don't know who you're messing with," he warned, his voice barely above a whisper. I tilted my head, studying him like he was nothing more than another problem to solve. "You wouldn't be the first man to think that, Ben. And I promise, you won't be the last." His hands curled into fists, but before he could say anything else, the final nail in the coffin came. A chime echoed through the lounge. The club's private network had been breached. Screens on the walls flickered. Security feeds. Member lists. Financial records. The full depth of this operation was now public. Phones rang. Guards rushed to control the situation. But it was too late. The house of cards had collapsed. And standing in the middle of it all, I watched as the empire of lies that had seduced my wife burned to the ground. I turned, walking toward the exit, letting the chaos unfold behind me. Just as I reached the door, I heard my name. "Daniel." Emily's voice. Desperate. I didn't stop. Not this time. The night air hit me as I stepped outside, cool and crisp against my skin. The city stretched out before me, alive with the hum of traffic and the distant chatter of people who had no idea that, just a few floors above, a secret world had just imploded. Behind me, the club was in chaos. Security guards scrambling. Staff whispering frantically into earpieces. The sound of raised voices filtering through the heavy glass doors. I kept walking. And then, "Daniel." Emily's voice cut through the night, sharp with desperation. I didn't stop. Not when I heard the click of her heels as she ran after me. Not when I felt her presence just steps behind me. "Daniel, please, just listen." I exhaled slowly, then turned around. She stood there, breathless, her silk dress slightly disheveled, her eyes wide and shining under the glow of the streetlights. She looked lost. Small. Nothing like the woman who had stood in that room just moments ago, playing a role she thought I'd never see. "You ruined everything," she whispered, her voice breaking. I studied her for a long moment. "No, Emily," I said quietly. "You did." She flinched like I had struck her. I should have felt something watching her like this. Pity. Sadness. anger. But all I felt was empty. Daniel, I never meant to get caught. I cut in, my voice calm, steady. Yeah, I figured. Tears welled in her eyes. I made a mistake. I let out a dry laugh. A mistake? That's what you're calling it. She swallowed hard, nodding. I was lost. I got caught up in something that didn't mean anything. I shook my head. It meant enough for you to lie to me. To hide it. To throw away 10 years of marriage for whatever that was in there. Her lips trembled. I love you, Daniel. I tilted my head slightly, considering her words. Then, after a beat, I said, no. You love the idea of me. You love the life we built. You love the version of me that never would have found out. She shook her head frantically. That's not true. I exhaled sharply. You know, I spent years believing we were a team. That we were building something real together. But you were spending our time, our money, my trust on this. I gestured vaguely toward the club. Daniel, please. I held up a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. You want forgiveness? She nodded quickly, tears now trailing down her cheeks. I smiled. A small, tired thing. You don't deserve it. And just like that, whatever was left between us shattered completely. I turned away, stepping off the curb toward my car. Emily didn't follow this time. She just stood there, alone, watching me go. As I opened the car door, I took one last look back. The club behind her was finished. The life she had tried to keep hidden was now exposed. And me? I was finally free. Without another word, I got in and drove away. I never looked back again. And that's how my marriage ended. Not with a fight. Not with screaming. Just with the quiet realization that the person I thought I knew had never really existed at all. Thank you for visiting my YouTube channel. Your support, likes, and comments truly inspire me to create even more engaging content. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. You're a part of this amazing community, and I'm thrilled to share my stories with you. See you in the next video on YouTube.